Moldova's pro-EU President Maia Sandu has claimed a second term after a tense election runoff viewed as a pivotal choice between Europe and Russia.
몰도바의 친유럽연합 성향의 마이아 산두 대통령이 유럽과 러시아 사이의 중요한 선택을 의미하는 치열한 대선 결선 투표에서 승리해 재선에 성공했습니다. Tell us more.
Yeah, there's been some controversy, some scandal involving this election. But what's happened is we have the preliminary results, and Sandu is leading with almost 55% of the vote. And so she gave a speech saying she promised to be a president for all Moldovans. The issue has been that the national security advisor to the president has said there was interference, in fact, massive interference from Russia in the process, and that could possibly distort the outcome. Russia has denied everything, and we had another election in Eastern Europe in Georgia, and the president there said it had been a Russian special operation, that there had been meddling there as well. This goes back to the Soviet times, because Moldova was part of the USSR, the Soviet Republic, for 51 years. It's next to Ukraine and Romania, and of course Ukraine is one of Russia's targets right now. We'll see. It seems like pro-EU sentiment has won out, but we only have the preliminary results.
And it sounds really tense.
It does, very tense.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Oh, it's like when I tell a bad joke and Sue looks at me. I can feel the tension in the room. Yeah, if something is tense, there is some kind of underlying conflict or argument or disagreement.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're a couple and somebody forgets to buy somebody else a birthday present, I think the evening is going to be tense.
There's going to be a lot of tension in the air.
Yes.
그래요. 텐션은 긴장감이고 tense는 긴장된이라는 형용사인데요. A tense election이었습니다. 아주 긴장감이 많이 흐르는 그런 선거였다라는 뜻이 되겠고요. Pivotal, what's that?
Means it's very important. Without it, something would not be able to work. Comes back to the term pivot. If you've ever studied any kind of engineering or mechanics, you know that a pivot is pivotal in making, for example, a car work. You need pivots for all sorts of things.
Exactly. Pivotal이라고 하면 보통 굉장히 중요하다라는 의미로 써요. 그래서 P-I-V-O-T-A-L, pivotal, 매우 중요한 그런 결정이었다라는 표현이 나오고 있습니다. All right, let's have a look at the headline again. Moldova's pro-EU president, Maia Sandu, has claimed a second term after a tense election runoff viewed as a pivotal choice between Europe and Russia. This is our next headline.
Scientists have discovered that limiting sugar intake during a child's first 1,000 days of life can help protect against diabetes and high blood pressure later in adulthood.
생후 1000일까지 당분 섭취를 제한할 경우 성인기 후반에 당뇨병과 고혈압 발병률이 감소한다는 학계 발표가 나왔습니다. So don't feed your babies anything sweet.
It certainly seems to be, according to these results, and it is quite incredible that if you restrict the sugar intake in that first 1,000 days, it's linked to a 35% drop in type 2 diabetes in middle age and a 20% fall in high blood pressure. And it also seems to delay these diseases in terms of high blood pressure and diabetes, maybe by 2 to 4 years later.
Okay.
So there is a big difference. What's interesting is that they used something that I guess my parents were experimented on. My parents were born in 1946, and up until 1953, there was sugar rationing, which means kids did not have access to a lot of sweets or sweet things. So they used research from there to look at how that impacted either the kids who grew up without the sugar or the kids who were born in 1953 and suddenly had sugar all over the place.
Okay.
Certainly, it's a big signal for parents. Maybe look at your baby's diet and be careful with the sugar.
Yeah, so it looks like your parents unintentionally were not given the sugar
yes.
when they were younger. But these days, parents should intentionally not give their babies sugar.
As for us, Sue, it's too late.
Oh dear. All right. 자, 이렇게 생후 1000일까지. So that's about roughly 3 years, 2 to 3 years. 그렇게 아기한테 이런 당분 섭취를 제한하면은 굉장히 좋다는 겁니다. 나중에 어른이 됐을 때 당뇨병이나 고혈압이 발병할 가능성이 많이 낮아진다고 해요. 아기 때 이렇게 스위트한 것들을 안 먹게 되면. 자, sugar intake라는 표현 보겠습니다.
It's the amount of sugar that you consume. And this term intake can be do with eating and drinking, but it can also just be something going into your body or going into something else. For example, each year, every school has a new intake of students, meaning there's a new group of young kids who go to school and hopefully don't have too many sugary treats.
네, intake라는 것은 무언가 받아들인다라는 의미가 될 수 있기 때문에 and new intake of students라고 하면은 신입생을 학교에서 많이 받습니다. 이런 의미가 될 텐데 우리가 먹는 것 중에서 설탕, 당을 섭취하는 것도 역시 intake를 써서요. sugar intake, 설탕 섭취라고 해석할 수 있습니다. And what about adulthood?
Well, we are in adulthood, Sue.
We are.
Because we're over the age of, I guess it's going to depend on which country you're in, 18 or 19. Certainly,
Yeah.
I think of as adulthood beginning at the age of 18. Here in Korea, I think 19 is often thought as the age of adulthood. But it's when we change, we switch from being a minor to an adult.
Exactly. And the pronunciation of this word differs depending on which part of the world you're in. In North America, they say adult. And in England, they say adult.
Yes.
But it's the same thing.
It is the same thing. And again, it's one of those cases where choose which pronunciation you prefer and stick to it.
네. 자, adulthood는 바로 성인, 성년이 되는 그 명사 형태가 되겠습니다. 그런 이제 시기가 되겠죠. adulthood. 자, 다시 한번 제가 읽어보겠습니다. Scientists have discovered that limiting sugar intake during a child's first 1,000 days of life can help protect against diabetes and high blood pressure later in adulthood. All right, well, let's move on to the final headline.
China experienced a substantial decline in marriage registrations in the first 9 months of 2024, with 4.7 million couples registering, 943,000 fewer than in the same period the previous year, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs.
올해 3분기까지 중국의 결혼 건수는 약 470만 쌍으로 전년 동기 대비 94만 3천 쌍이 줄어들면서 현저한 감소세를 보였다고 중국 민정부가 발표했습니다.
Yes, so down almost a million. Last year in 2023, it was 5.69 million marriage registrations. Why? Well, it's down to a lot of the reasons why here in Korea we're seeing a decrease in the number of babies. It's economic uncertainties, it's rising living costs, and people are postponing their marriages. Chinese authorities are trying to reverse the trend and get more people marrying. They've introduced a draft law which will simplify everything when it comes to marriage and make it much harder to get divorced. We'll see how that works, but certainly the young Chinese people are talking about it. Should I get married? Should I delay getting married? Should I stay single? These are all difficult questions and important questions for those who have just reached adulthood.
Exactly. Because China is such a populous country, getting married, having children is a big issue.
Yes.
All right, if something is substantial, what's that?
It's not small. It's not tiny. It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Might not be large,
Right.
but it's certainly larger than small. So we talk about a substantial amount of something. It could be people, it could be food, it could be anything you like. For example, if you're working manual labor, you should always have a substantial breakfast.
Right.
You're going to be using your body all day. So
Yep.
you need to make sure you've got your rice, your meat, your soup, your everything else.
And in a lawsuit, maybe you have substantial evidence to say, you know, this is my case. I have all this proof.
So you promised you weren't going to sue me.
substantial이라는 게요. 상당하다, 상당히 많다라는 의미로 많이 씁니다. 그래서 substantial decline이라는 것은 상당히 많이 줄었다라는 뜻이 되겠고요. substantial breakfast 그러면 든든한 아침 식사가 되겠죠. 자, marriage registration.
Well, it's when you go to the government office and you sign the form that says we are married. It's that official process.
That's right.
I always thought that you did it when you got married on the day. And then I came to Korea and realized, oh no, we have to go to the government office first, get legally married, and
Yeah.
then go to the wedding hall a week later and get actually married.
맞아요. 서양에서는요, 여러분, 그 주례를 보는 분 자체가 그 혼인 신고를 승인할 수 있는 권한이 있는 사람이더라고요.
You sign on the day.
맞습니다. 그래서 식장에서 바로 혼인 신고가 그 자리에서 되는 거예요. 우리는 별개죠. 따로 이제 가서 혼인 신고하는 것 따로 돼 있기 때문에 뭐 미리 하는 분들도 계시고 나중에 하는 분들도 계시고 그러는데 서양에서는 그 식장에서 거기에서 바로 혼인 신고가 돼요.
Yeah, it's a fascinating cultural difference. I don't think there's right or wrong about it. They're both fine. They're both perfectly good. It's just weird when you go from one culture to another and go,
Yeah.
that's not how it's supposed to work, is
Different.
it?
Yeah, there's a cultural difference there, as you said. Yeah. And the person that does that is the officiator, I think. That's not what we call them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's going to be certain terms, depending if you're getting married in a religious institution or not.
Right. In that case, you'd have a religious person.
Yes.
아, 그래요. 주례는 뭐 다 문화마다 다르긴 하겠네요.
Let's face it, Sue, there are substantial differences in marriage culture all over the world.
That is very true. Well, here's the headline again. China experienced a substantial decline in marriage registrations in the first 9 months of 2024, with 4.7 million couples registering, 943,000 fewer than in the same period the previous year, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs. Well, that's it for the headlines this morning with Paul Matthews.